Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Jared Delaney. I'll be chairing this afternoon's session. So I want to first pay my respects to the Aranda people, the country on which we are having this afternoon session and the whole festival, and pay respects to elders past, present, and emerging. So, great morning session, and we should just get stuck right in. Still some people probably trickling in from lunch, but online's ready to go. We're ready to go. So let's get started. So first of all, I'd like to introduce Marg Eyre, Rural Innovation and Adaptation at the University of Melbourne. So Margaret is a senior lecturer in the Faculty of Veterinary and Agricultural Sciences at the University of Melbourne. She works within the field of applied social science, where she contributes new knowledge and innovative frameworks and approaches for enabling innovation and adaptation in agriculture and cultural and natural resource management. She has over 20 years experience in collaborative, Indigenous-led, community-based cultural and natural resource management and research. So yeah, let's welcome Marg to the stage.
Thanks very much, everybody. I'd like to start by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land we're meeting on today as well, the Aranda people, their elders, past, present and future, and the ancestors that made this beautiful place. I'd also like to acknowledge the Tiwi people who own Tiwi estates, and I'll talk to you more about that in a moment. It's their lands and seas that are the focus of this story that I'm going to be sharing with you today. So before I start, I'd like to also tell you a bit about my colleagues who unfortunately weren't able to be here today to co-present. Firstly, I'd like to introduce you to Mavis Keranawa, who is a member of the Mantoopi landowning group, who are the traditional owners for Warramyunga, which is a Tiwi community on Bathurst Island, where to date we have spent most of the time working together on this project. Her homeland is Janunupi on Melville Island, and her kinship and relations are the Jilawiri, the Brolga tribe, and her totem dance is Tutuwali the shark. Her current role is part-time researcher with the Tiwi organisation, Tiwi Resources, and she's also studying Indigenous Studies at Charles Darwin University. Michaela Spencer, who you can see also on the front side here, is a research fellow at the Northern Institute at Charles Darwin University, based in Darwin. Like me, she's a social scientist. She also has an environmental science background. And in particular, she has been working in and trained in science and technology studies, approaches and theories. She lectures also at the university and is developing a really fantastic package of micro-credentials around Indigenous scholarship and research, which is making a big impact in some communities. So today I'm going to be talking about this painting, and you'll see it several times during the presentation, which is known as the Tutuni story. And the Tutuni story is a guide on how to do culturally safe and properly negotiated collaborative research for Tiwi Islands people and their country, which is called Murukapuni in Tiwi language. And so in this presentation, I'll talk about the Tutuni story and the ideas within and behind it, the story it tells, and how it is guiding us to do our collaborative research and responsible co-design of research within that. The stunning artwork of the Tutuni story was done by local Tiwi artist and Mavis's sister, Fiona Keranawa. Great, thanks. So I just thought I'd start by locating us in the work. This is a map of the Tiwi Islands. Has anybody here been to the Tiwi? No, oh, yep. Great, there's one person in the room who's been there. So they are located approximately 80 kilometres off the coast of Darwin, so off the north coast of the Northern Territory. And the islands are owned by 8 Tiwi landowning groups. You can see here in this map, it shows those particular estates, and down at the bottom of Melville Island, so we have, sorry, Bathurst Island we have on the left, and Melville Island, which is actually the second biggest island in Australia after Tassie. We have the lands of the Mantoopi clan, on which Wurrumyunga, the community I spoke about earlier, is situated, and these are Mavis's clan lands. And much of our work to date, as I mentioned, has been centred around working with people and institutions at Wurrumyunga, and I'll talk more about that now. This is just an aerial shot of Wurrumyunga from a trip that Michaela and I and other members of our research team made to the islands in April this year, after not being able to travel to the islands for 2 years. So it was pretty exciting. And the other shot there is just of a beautiful waterhole that Mavis took us to as part of our week-long visit. And so I mentioned that we were working, so Mavis, Michaela and I working a larger research project. And you can see here the members of this project, which is an Australian Research Council funded project, with the partners, key partners, the Tiwi Land Council and Tiwi Resources Incorporated, and it aims to support planning for sustainability, biodiversity conservation, and also economic development on the Tiwis. It involves researchers from Deakin University, from Tiwi Resources, from Charles Darwin University and Melbourne University. It's led by Professor Emily Nicholson from Deakin University. And it has 3 different work programs. One is based around field ecology, looking at the condition and the distribution of faunal and vegetation communities on the islands as a support to Tiwi land use planning. The second part of the project is about looking at different land use scenarios that are of interest and importance to the Tiwi, and modelling those using conservation science tools. And the third part that Michaela and Mavis and I are working together is the social science and engagement part of the project, which is focused on engaging Tiwi institutions and people to understand and identify what is important to Tiwi when it comes to biodiversity conservation and economic development, identifying their goals and aspirations in those areas, and also thinking about what it means to do collaborative research together. And that is going to be the focus of what I talk about now. So in the work that Mavis and Michaela and I and other members of the team have been doing, while we have been talking to people about what's important to them in caring for Tiwi Murukupuni or country, we've also been focusing on how we should be doing our research together in this project. And this involves asking questions like these ones here. So how should collaborative research involving Tiwi knowledges, and in this case, knowledges in the ecological and social sciences, be done? And how do we, specifically in our team, work together, these Tiwi knowledges, people and places, with ecological and social scientific knowledges in ways that are culturally safe and responsible, and that importantly will provide insight and support for Tiwi decision-making for Tiwi land use futures. So in response to these questions, Mavis and her sister Fiona have created a unique framework, the Tutuni story, for guiding our collaborative research together. And these are Mavis's words. The Tutuni story is created using Tiwi narrative that I have designed using the concept of Tiwi storytelling through art. The Tutuni story is used as an engagement tool for our collaborative research project on the Tiwi Islands to plan for biodiversity and conservation and sustainable development. The painting shows a Tutuni, known as a Pukamani pole or Tutini, the famous art form from the Tiwi Islands. And even if you haven't been to the Tiwi, I imagine some of you do recognise that as being uniquely Tiwi. The Tutuni represents and acknowledges Papalui, so the past, Ningani, the present, and Palaginari, the future, as one whole concept towards the project and caring for Tiwi country. Here's some more detail and a further explanation from Mavis about the Tutuni story. The footprints and the dots represent the journey of the Tiwi people and stakeholders, walking and working together towards creating a better future for the next Tiwi generations to come. The Katatuni leaves represent the smoking ceremony for healing and chasing bad spirits away, as sometimes the path taken can be crooked and can get lost in the transactions of the decision-making process. The Pamagini is an armband used in ceremony to represent the Tiwi pathway and identity, belonging and connection to Tiwi country, language and heritage. The circle within the Tutuni represents a Milimika and the 4 main Tiwi clan or skin groups. It represents individual people's roles and responsibilities to ceremony and leadership of each Tiwi family and the responsibility we have to each other and in our homes, workplaces, community and Murukapuni or country. The spear, known as Numiniaka, represents the crocodile tail, Tuara, as it travels around the Tiwi Islands, protecting the land and the sea. The hands holding the Tiwi Islands represent the objectives towards a Tiwi vision for today and the future generations, with our ancestors' spirits still guiding us through, and the oneness as Tiwi people caring for Murukapuni. So under Mavis's research leadership, we're working together to understand how the Tutuni story can guide us to do culturally safe and responsible collaborative research that honours and respects the creative differences between Tiwi knowledge practices and non-Tiwi or so-called Western scientific ones. As Mavis explains again, the Tutuni story is living. It is flexible in that it enables us to talk to different people in different places and institutions and to negotiate what collaborative research should do and importantly, how it should be done. It is adaptable and Mavis has emphasised the importance of engaging young Tiwi people with the story and recognising the important role they play in applying technologies in particular to support Tiwi decision-making about Murukapuni. However, it's important to recognise that the Tutuni story also provides a very stable foundation for our project and work together, which is located in Tiwi knowledge practices for governing Tiwi Murukapuni. Everything we do must be based on this foundation. So here you can see us working together using the Tutuni story to engage with different people and organisations on the Tiwi, and as a way of also beginning conversations about Tiwi Murukapuni. In April, we spent 4 days, as I mentioned, working together at Wirramiunga after a long time working together on Zoom, which you saw in the previous very unflattering image. And we started talking to people at different times and places and in different Tiwi organisations, including here you can see, the next slide, sorry, is working at the Tiwi Islands Training and Employment Board, TITAB. We talked to people at Red Cross, the Tiwi Rangers, who are key participants in the project, at Tiwi Resources, and started discussing and recording important Tiwi names, stories and issues of concern to these different people and groups. And so from these discussions, we have an evolving plan for further visits and discussions as we go on together co-designing our collaborative research. So here you can see Mavis sharing the Tutuni story in the bottom image with a group of women at TITAB, the Training and Employment Board, who are doing an employment skills course, and their trainer, Silla. We shared with them, as you can see here, also maps of the islands and continued to discuss important places, Tiwi Murukapuni and their meaning, and especially issues that are of concern to them at the moment. This is just another example of Mavis working to share the Tutuni story with key Tiwi institutions and people. And here she's presenting it to senior Tiwi landowners at the Tiwi Resources Board meeting in December 2020. So when we were together for this week in April, we visited under Mavis's guidance and leadership, important places around and at Wurrumianga. You can see here at the top left-hand image is of the cemetery at Wurrumianga, where she took us to see Tutuni poles, many of which are there in reverence for the people that are buried there. She took us to places like the Waterhole, she's describing to us medicinal plant uses there, and to the museum, where she shared with us stories of life in Wurrumianga. And you can see here her instructing us about the 4 different Tiwi skin groups: the mullet, sun, pandanus and stone. So I understand this work that we were doing together as Mavis, inducting us into a way of knowing Tiwi people and places, which is foundational to our collaborative research as it evolves, but also to the Tutuni story itself. So with Mavis leading the team, we are in a process of learning together about who are the important Tiwi people and organisations and Murukapuni, the places and issues that we should be engaging with, documenting and exploring in this project. We're exploring where and when we should be engaging with them, what are the kinds of things we can usefully and meaningfully do in our collaborative research to support Tiwi land use planning and decision making about economic development and biodiversity conservation. And so to date, there are 2 strands of research that are emerging from our using the Tutuni story in this way. The first is the potential to record and cartographically map Tiwi vegetation communities. Currently, there's an incomplete Western scientific vegetation map of the islands, and Tiwi stakeholders and organisations have said it would be really useful to have a more comprehensive map to aid them with their various environmental assessments and other land use planning jobs. So you can see here, Alice in the left-hand image is a PhD student in the project working with Emily, and she's starting to record there on that map of the Tiwi important vegetation places. So, of course, this work includes exploring how the names, significance and features of Tiwi knowledges of plants might be appropriately represented. And that may not necessarily be in a cartographic form, for example. The other strand of research that's emerged is about understanding how we can apply the Tutuni story to issues of particular significance and or interest to the Tiwi. So Anna mentioned actually yesterday that the Mantupi clan have been contesting a gas proposal development on their lands and seas. There are quite a few of these in train and in the Tiwi, including discussions around some changes to the forestry enterprise that's been there for quite a long time. And so we're continuing to talk to Tiwi people and organisations about how we could apply or utilise the Tutuni story to engage the right people in beginning discussions about these kinds of, very complex initiatives, and understanding the benefits, of course, the costs, but also the outcomes and how they align with Tiwi people's own goals for both economic development, but also caring for Murukapuni. So I think it's important to also say that the Tutuni story is doing other kinds of work in other times and places as well. So here you can see it on the wall in the Gippsland Art Gallery in Sale in Victoria. This exhibition has just finished, but it was on the wall there for a couple of months. And it was part of this, Fragile Earth Extinction exhibition. And what we understand the Tutuni story as doing in this context is actually mobilising Tiwi concepts of knowledge production, which are embedded in the Tutuni story, and how that knowledge production should happen in ways that are ethically and culturally appropriate. And this is providing important insights to conversations related to conservation and environmental decline in other places. So what this exhibition was aiming to do was just to stimulate thinking about and exploring ways together about complex problems of sustainability, like climate change, for example. And Mavis did present about the Tutuni story on Zoom from Darwin, because the face-to-face 2-day symposium that was planned as part of the exhibition was cancelled because of COVID. She was planning to be there in person. Nevertheless, she still presented via Zoom, which you can watch online. And 160 people attended online over the 2 days of online symposium, and nearly 8,000 visitors came through the exhibition themselves. Okay, so just to finish up, our next steps together are to continue to talk about the Tutuni story with the right people and organisations with roles and responsibilities for governing Tiwi lands and seas. Mavis has initiated making a pamphlet. That's actually the very next job we have to do about the Tutuni story. She's already developed this narrative that you can see there on the left, and we'll put that together in perhaps in a bridge form, or we'll edit it a bit and put it with other photos and the image of the Tutuni story. And the idea is that will make it more accessible to more people and organisations. The Tiwi Land Council has very recently expressed their interest in working with us to use the Tutuni story as an opener for their formal board meetings. So it is starting to develop a life beyond just our project. So the outcome of using the Tutuni story in our research, as Mavis explains it, is that Tiwi communities will be engaged in culturally safe ways in collaborative research. However, she has taught us that it's important to not take the Tutuni story as a model, as we might understand it in non-Indigenous sort of conceptions of these things. It is a process for negotiating how to go on together in ways that respect and embed Tiwi governance and knowledges as the foundation of right-way cross-cultural research in the Tiwi context. And so we understand it as an emergent plan for our collaboration in research, in which the relationship between people, Tiwi Murukapuni, so country, and researchers are defined. So thank you very much. I just wanted to end with some acknowledgements. Obviously, we are just the envoy really of a whole lot of work that is being done with other organisations, including Tiwi Resources, the Tiwi Land Council, the Tiwi Rangers, other Tiwi organisations and people, and the other members of our project team. Thanks very much.